Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Today we have the esteemed Dr. Bob Adams with us, board certified family medicine physician, Navy SEAL, Army veteran, jack of all trades and master of all trades. Do you mind giving us an introduction of yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm currently a family physician. I spent 18 years in the Navy, Naval Academy, as was my father and grandfather before me. And then got into the Navy SEALs and stayed there until I got too old to climb up the walls single-handedly and try to find something else I can do. And medicine came knocking, and I built a clinic in the Raleigh area in the town of Nightdale. It became its very first family doc, and ran that until I got so busy I had to build a new place, and I designed and built a 14,000 square foot multi-specialty clinic that runs the main drag through the town of Nightdale, North Carolina. And ran that until about 2 years ago and said, okay, that's enough. I'm going to take a break, and sold it to the University of North Carolina. And I've been part-time 1 or 2 days a week as the medical director of a Job Corps center. And I don't know when this video will come out, but by the time it does, everybody will be aware that the Job Corps centers, this is June of 2025, are being shut down, and all the kids are going home, and my job's ending there. And so in the next month or so, I may just really retire.
What made you want to become a doctor?
So that's interesting, because I went to the Naval Academy with the express purpose of becoming a Navy SEAL. I was in high school when they announced the existence of this secret organization called Navy SEALs. Didn't want anything to do with the military at all. And went, wait, they jump out of airplanes, put things up, scuba dive, and get paid extra for it? I'm going to go do that. And so I did the Navy SEAL thing, and loved absolutely every single minute of it. But as you get more senior and older, the physical demands are quite significant. I realized I had to find something else to do with the rest of my life. And I started looking around at things that would be as fun as being a SEAL team platoon commander. I thought, the only thing that really got me excited at the Naval Academy for classes was biology. So I go, okay, wait a minute. That was my only A+. I loved every minute of it. Who does biology? Hey, doctors do biology. So I started thinking about it, looking into it. And now I'm 30 years old with 1.5 children on board. And I came over to my wife and I said, I'm having these thoughts that maybe I want to change careers. And she said, well, go do it. You better do it now because you're getting older and they're not going to take you. So it was only just looking back at the things that made me happy, biology being one of the key factors. And I said, I'm going to give it a try. And it took me 3.5 years to go back to school, get all my prerequisites taken again because they were too old to use for applications to med school. And I was working full-time during the day and going to school at night. I didn't throw in the fact that I had already gotten my MBA by this time. The 3.5 years later, I'm now 36 years old, and I'm on my way to Wake Forest University on an Army scholarship for the same reason that I'm taking the money and running. But it was a very logical decision of what going to make me happy. And, you haven't asked me this question yet, but I'm going to share it. Did it make me happy? I've adored being a doctor. It's probably the most rewarding profession that I could have imagined. I went through with 2 kids because 3.5 years later, we were 2 children in elementary school or daycare, and it was a challenge. Starting my internship at 40 years old, 4 years later, in debt, it was something.
I can imagine. You have a long history of doing very hard things, and it seems like from buds all the way through is a really interesting decision there to do very extremely challenging things one after the other. Tell us a little bit more about that too. And I think that a lot of clinicians today, David, maybe you can speak more to this too, is burnout is a real issue. They go through the difficulties that come with getting the degree, and then they get into practice, and it turns out there's still a lot of other challenges that they didn't expect, these sorts of things. I'd love to hear your perspective on kind of resilience and tips as well. And
you gave me the perfect plug for my first book. Thank you very much. Because this book is about these 11 men from my SEAL class. It was a true story. And it's called 6 Days of Impossible because it talks about Hell Week. It's, 6 Days of Impossible. Go every SEAL that goes to training, there were 70 of us that started and 11 of us that finished. When I tell people, well, we stay up for 6 days straight. We run 200 miles with boats in our heads. We're soaking wet, freezing cold the entire time. They wake up at midnight on Sunday by spraying you down and getting you wet and sandy, and you stay that way for 6 days. And where you get to the point where you're hallucinating, and they feed you 4 meals a day, or the body would shut down. Body temperatures drop down into the higher 80s, which is inconsistent with normal life. But, if you're running, you'll stay alive. And the reason I bring that up is the subtitle to this book is A Doctor Looks Back. Because 30 years after we finished SEAL training, we're all off on our own different careers. And we would get together for our reunions every 5 years and go, why us? Why the 11 out of 70 of us? We must have had something in common. And I went, I've been a family practice doc now for a while, and I know how to deal with stress. I treat it all the time. Maybe we have something in common. Let me go back and look. So I went back in writing this book. It took me 3 years to write it. And I interviewed all my classmates, got their whole life stories, how to remember what we were doing in Hell Week and what they why didn't we quit? Why didn't you quit when people tried to make you quit? Because Hell Week is all about trying to get you to quit. Because if you have doubts, you're going to fail. And I stumbled again on the answer to that question. And, I really think the Navy should pay me a lot of money for the answer to that question. Why did these 11 men succeed when the other ones failed? Because none of us were star athletes. None of us were endurance athletes. None of us were great swimmer. One of us was a great swimmer. But we just were kind of average guys. What was one thing we had in common? The one thing we had in common is that before we decided to go to SEAL training, every single one of us had been beaten up by life. Everyone. We had, I won't tell you which one I am, but we had sons of alcoholic fathers that had to stand between their mother and father to keep the mother alive. We had Floridian who was so poor, if he didn't use his slingshot to kill the squirrels and birds, he wouldn't get any meat. We had one was an adopted child who was left on a 70-year-old's doorstep who didn't want him, and you'll hear these stories, you go, oh my God. The answer to, and you alluded to this, the answer to success in stressful situation is having survived stressful situations before. The SEAL teams were always blown away by the fact you can bring a star quarterback and a monster athlete in and they would quit in the first day because they've got options. They can go somewhere else and do something else. They got the natural ability to do anything. We were just, runts. Life had already kicked us around. Somebody, dragged us out of the gutter, and we looked around going, how can I prove to myself that I'm okay? And, SEAL training is the toughest military training in the world, bar none. And every single one of the guys I talked to said, kind of chose that path to prove to myself that I'm okay.
Yeah, and I think one amazing. First off, that's an answer we should be giving to the Navy for that one. But I think one super interesting thing that came up a few times too is the decision to do it and not having these secondary options. There's a lot of places in life where if you make a decision and say that's my decision, right? It makes everything else much easier because you don't have to keep rethinking it every time. If you make a decision about who you want to be and what you want to be, every single thing that comes up that might be against that, it's easy to decide, no, that just doesn't match up, right? And that's integrity essentially. And so you build this based on that integrity and kind of proving and continuing to be exactly who you knew you were despite the life circumstances that came before that. That's awesome.
Expand what you just said, which is completely correct, to say, if you don't fail along the way, if you don't get tested, if you don't learn from life experiences, and when you get later on and life's been easy, you're going to have a problem. These are the people who kill themselves. It's like, it's been easy, and now all of a sudden it's not. And there's where the burnout and the suicides are, a societal issue. So, celebrate your failures. Actually, before this call, I was on the call to my sister, and she's just decided to retire, very, very successful real estate business. And I said, I'm at that point too. And, we've had this wonderful life of successes. And I threw out there, but I could write a book on my failures. And she goes, ooh, me too. I said, that's a conversation we got to have for a future time, because that's how we became who we are, is the failures along the way.
Wow, phenomenal. Obviously, anyone who's been a Navy SEAL has been through tremendous stress and suffering. I'm kind of curious how that shaped your journey as a doctor. What made you, how did that get you through all the difficult years of residency, serving as a doctor, getting pimped, all those sorts of things. How did those experiences as a SEAL and as an Army veteran, how did that shape you and help you as a doctor?
So it's interesting that when I applied to go to my residency program, Fund Medical School. And I was in an Army uniform, but in a civilian University of Wake Forest. And I went to Madigan Army Medical Center in Washington because it had the best family practice program. I went there for my third year rotation, spent a month there, met everybody. They shook my hands. They said, we hope you choose us. Then I came back for my fourth year, which you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to go someplace else because there's 6 beautiful big hospitals that do Army family practice residency. And the colonel in charge of that program said, Bob, you were here last year. We remember you. Why'd you come back? And I said, well, because when I fill out my choices for residency, it's going to say Madigan and kill me, kill me, kill me, kill me. And he goes, okay. He goes, then he falls, and this is how I'm answering your question. Then he goes, but let me be honest with you, Bob, our first Part 1 board scores were not as high as many of the other applicants that want to come here. I said, I was in a different program at Wake Forest that didn't require us to memorize some of those board questions because we were more clinical. And I thought about it for a minute, and I said, sir, I'll be honest with you. If you're going to pick people based on their high school education grades or college grades or even the board scores, you're not going to pick me. I said, but if you bring me into this program, I may not be the smartest doctor you bring in, but I'll be the best doctor you graduate. And he goes, oh, that's a really good answer. And I got picked.
That's phenomenal. And how did any war stories, quote unquote, how your background got you through residency or maybe even serving as a doctor?
Sure, but it's not a survival story. It's an age and wisdom story, because, age and experience will beat youth and ability every single time. And one of the first things I did is I walked in on my very first day of my residency with leave requests, vacation requests. You go, what are you doing? I'm requesting Christmas Day, New Year's Day, Labor Day, vacation. So those are national holidays. I know. And I want to be off on that day because I'm an intern and you're going to have me on a call and I don't want to be. I got 2 kids at home. The guy goes, oh, that's clever. Approved. Thank you very much. So, you set yourself up for success the little ways. I will tell you that back then, 36-hour work days were common for interns. And if I hadn't done 6 days without sleep, hell week, I would have found that pretty devastating at 40 years old. I would come in after 36 hours straight and nurse would grab me and go, Dr. House, did you write this order last night? And I look at it, I go, oh, my handwriting, I hope you didn't do that. You go, no, we know you're an intern. We didn't do it. Because these are tough times and sleep deprivation and, endurance. It was tough. And one of the things that I also figured out is that my life partner, my lovely wife, who allowed me to go to medical school and, and spend every penny we'd ever earned to go into debt at 40 years old, she was there with me the whole time. And one of the things I was discovering in, medical school, certain rotations like surgery, 10 weeks, I wouldn't see my children awake. And I'd be at work at 4 in the morning and coming home at 10 at night. And my kids were asleep. So now I'm going to go through a whole year of that as my intern year. And I'm going, when am I going to see the children? And my wife goes, I got that figured out. You tell me what ward you're on. Every night you're on call. I'm bringing the kids and dinner, and we're going to eat, with you in the hospital. And what a brilliant solution, because my kids who are in elementary school now are going, Dad's working. He's not abandoning us. And my son would come in and go, let's see, you're on ward 12 now. That's internal medicine, right? And we'd be eating, and the people would go off, and I'd run away and come back. But she every third day, she'd show up in the hospital with the kids in a basket for dinner, and we'd make the best of it. And, that was a survival technique to keep the family alive during this stressful time.
That's awesome. Yeah. It sounds like your wife is also a Navy SEAL too. She knows something about perseverance and making things work.
She's tough. There's 2 in my second book, stand by for book promotion number 2, which is Swords and Saints, a Doctor's Story. I talk a lot about this process of becoming a doctor and coming home to say, sweetheart, I would like to stop what I'm doing, spend every penny we have in the banks and borrow more to be poor for 4 to 7 more years. Will you, if you don't want me to do it, I won't do it. And she said, I can tell you're not where you want to be. Please do something that makes you happy. Come home and love our children, and don't come home and kick them because you're miserable. I'm with you, whatever you decide to do. And then, we're driving to medical school 3.5 years later, because I remember that's how long it took me to get the applications and everything done. We're driving there, and I looked at her and I said, I have a question for you. Why did you marry me? Because, I was poor. I had nothing going for me, and she goes, I married you for your potential. And she's kept that attitude all along. I saw something in you. I knew whatever you decided to do, we would be fun together. And then and she added, you remember, we were poor and happy when we got married. We can be poor and happy again. And that's the wisdom of a strong woman. How many times have you failed is a key interview question that I think any business person should ask.
I love that.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. On the flip side, there's some things we're looking at, and other folks that we've been interviewing who are involved in telehealth, sort of fast forwarding to today a little bit. So I know that you volunteer. You also see patients via MD Live, right? And it's sort of on the flip side. It's a lot of people are flocking to it because it's easy. It is a little bit easier to be able to kind of turn it on and see patients remotely, from the comfort of your own home, and see your doctor from the comfort of your home on the patient side, these sorts of things. But still, there's a challenge for a lot of telehealth companies to be able to attract, talent from both PCPs and other specialists, those sorts of things. Curious to hear kind of, what your thought was around why do telehealth, and I think it came about after you sold the practice, right? Curious to hear a little more about that.
Yes and no. Because I was thinking about our earlier discussions and what are the big advantages to the telemedicine, and what are my experiences in that arena. And what I was remembering is that as a patient, I prefer telemedicine. When I kept my own clinic doctor from my clinic that I owned and operated, and when they would call me up, I'd call them for an appointment, and they go, well, do you want to come in or do you want a telehealth? I said, give me telehealth, because I just want the doctor to order some labs and do these things, And so I would choose it as a patient. And the other things that would pop up both during my active practice time and since then is, I turned 65 and Medicare kicks in, and Medicare wants your doctors to do an annual wellness check, which is a pain in the butt, particularly if you, all right, when is it? You go in there and you spend an hour with a nurse before you get to see a doctor, if you do at all. And I said, can I do it by telehealth? Oh, yeah, we can do that. And, UNC, during COVID, telehealth exploded, and most of the big hospital systems implemented that technology into their EMRs. And I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have Wake Hospital, Duke Hospital, UNC hospital system, and they're all on the same electronic medical record system called Epic, the biggest one in the country. And boom, Epic had the telehealth capability, and we all started using it. The doctors would prefer you to see them where they didn't have to wear a mask to talk to you. So the Medicare piece of the pie, I always choose telehealth, whether it's video or phone. Hey, you're just going to ask me questions. Let's chat. Let's get it done from the comfort of my home. I'm in my pajamas and, drinking my coffee. What do you want? And that works out great. The interesting use of telemedicine is in the Veterans Administration system. So I'm a disabled veteran, and part of my war experiences were unpleasant enough that I see a psychiatrist every 6 months. Used to be back in the day, we would do it a little more frequently, but I'm doing pretty well now. And he just wants to check in every 6 months. It's always video. Hey, you're not gonna listen to my heart. You're a psychiatrist. Come on, let's do it. And we become quite good friends by video, and I like that a lot. So it's something that's going to continue to grow, even though there's some question marks as the business of telemedicine gets in the way. But it's going to grow, and it's going to patients prefer it, doctors prefer it. And can I tell you a couple of telehealth experiences recently? So I had two patients yesterday that are worth, thinking about. One was a young girl. When somebody logs on to the MD Live website, which is 24 hours a day, any doctor in the state will see who's there and what they're there for. So, and I sit there and I watch it go ding, and I go, now on that one. And ding, and she was eczema. And I had written a long article on eczema in the past, and I'm grabbing this one. And I'm going, this is going to be fun. This is one of my areas of expertise. I like dermatology a lot. But she comes on, and her eczema wasn't eczema, and it was a video. So it's easy to see. Her rash went in a pattern like this on her face. And I went, well, first of all, I can just tell you by looking, that's not eczema, because that's typically a total body kind of thing. And it's not where eczema typically shows up. So let's investigate all of the possible causes of this rash of yours. And the first place I always go with any patient for any reason is, what medications are you taking? Because that's one of my missions in life, is to get everybody off the medicines that are on that they don't need. So we got that out of the way and didn't look at any contributing factors. Allergies, cats, all the things that could be in a row. Oh, I live in a house that used to be cat heaven. Okay. We're making this list, and then I'm going, oh, I forgot to ask you, what do you do for a living? Well, I work in a pizza place. Okay. Do you have any known allergies, to tomatoes and bread and gluten-free? Nothing. What do you do? He says, well, I put the pizzas in and out of the ovens. I said, hold it right there. Is it a gas oven? Yes, it is. So when you open the door, do you get a little blast of hot gas air? Probably what's doing this. And I said, because I made her pull her glasses out. Show me your glasses. We looked at them. I said, well, do me a favor and go clean those glasses when we're done. But I left it going, you need to tell your boss you need a different job. And she went, well, I don't like this job much anyway. So have him move me. So, I can't, I won't, the difficult part of urgent care is you don't get follow-up with your patients, so you don't know if you were right or not. But as I try to explain to my wife and children on a regular basis, I'm always right. I don't need that follow-up. Then the second one was yesterday. It says COVID. I said, oh, I love COVID, because there's so much misinformation out there. I'm going to grab onto this, and I'm going to save him from himself. Interestingly, first thing he said, I look at his medicine list, and I go, you're on medicine, some unusual medicines here. Are you being treated for any autoimmune condition? And he goes, well, and I have a thymoma. And David, you'll go, wait, that's one of those rare tumors that you almost never see. And I went, well, you're already my most interesting patient of the day. Talk to me about your thymoma, which is a cancer of the thymus gland, for those that are not rushing to their dictionary to look it up. And he goes, oh, I know it. Doctors always tell me I'm their most interesting patient once I share it with them. And so we're going through his list of issues. And because I'm on the medicines, I'm going, look, you called me about COVID. And we're going to talk about that. But the beauty of telemedicine, I've got all the time in the world. I don't see my next patient until I'm ready to see my next patient. So let's talk, Mr. Interesting, because that's why I'm doing this. And I got his whole story, and it was fascinating. And I go, do you know why you're taking a cholesterol medicine? That's so funny, Doc. Somebody started that on me. A cardiologist, they sent me because I had an arrhythmia. And guess what? As I know, they gave you aspirin, they gave you cholesterol medicine. I said, are you aware that at your age, there's zero benefit to either of those medicines for you? I kind of felt that. And I said, so I gave him his mini lecture of get rid of that statin, get rid of that aspirin, and now you won't have memory loss, you won't have diabetes, and you won't have aches and pains from your statin, and you won't have a fatal GI bleed from your aspirin. So, man, I'm so glad I called. and then we got to the COVID thing. And the story is even more interesting because in case anybody out there hasn't learned this about the COVID shots, we have multiple studies now coming out showing the more COVID shots you got, the more often you get COVID. Biden was a great example. He had 5 shots, he got COVID 5 times. And now we're finding that this is an international trend towards the more you get it, the more susceptible you are to it. It's not protective at all. And he goes, well, I've had 5 COVID shots. How many times you had COVID? This will be my 5th. Really? How fascinating. The classic example of, and then I said, let's skip ahead in the conversation after I walked him through all of what we just said. I go, I'm guessing you're calling me to ask for Paxlovid. Is that correct? Yes. And have you had Paxlovid before? Yes. And it worked immediately, which it didn't, of course, because there's no medicine that works immediately. And I said, I got to tell you something. You've had COVID 4 times. You have a natural immunity to COVID that is more powerful than anybody that's never had COVID, because now your T cells are alive and functioning and they remember how to battle COVID. And you really don't need Paxlovid, which comes with kidney risks and side effects it comes with all these warnings. Doctor, if you're going to prescribe Paxlovid, you got to go down this 15-point checklist so you don't kill them with the medicine. And I said, but you've already qualified for it because you have cancer, you're an ex-smoker, you're past age 60, you got all these check marks for, yes, doctor, I can give you Paxlovid. But I'm going to tell you, I really don't want to, but I will if you want it. And he goes, I want it. Okay. I thought you were going to say that. So you're going to get 5 days worth. And, if you're all better after 3 days, that's because your T cells kicked in and cured you without the Paxlovid. So, we left his friends with many thank yous. I had a ball. He had, interesting time with a doctor who had the time to spend with him, because I'm doing telehealth for fun. Some telehealth doctors try to get as many visits in as they can, in an hour. And so they have 5-minute visits, but not all. People are doing it, for the fun and the adventure. Will stay on with you and make it a rewarding experience for the doctor and physician.
That's amazing. It sounds like the freedom as well to choose if you want to spend that time or if you don't. And a lot of family medicine doctors, fresh out of residency, working for a big academic hospital or even just like general practice, they don't have that time necessarily. They're stuck busy doing other things. So I love the use of technology. I wanted to ask about that. Sounds like there's kind of a dashboard where you get to see what's coming in, Jane Smith with eczema, you can kind of cherry pick which patients you want to see. Any noteworthy or unique kind of technologies that they use MD Live to help you get your job done?
Yeah, a lot actually. And they keep improving. It's a nationwide company, I should say international. They've got some going outside of the United States, and they meet with the doctors online. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a telemedicine conference with the managers of the business and the other doctors, and they'll have 20 or 30 of us, and they'll be saying, "Hey, what are you finding that works? What are you finding that doesn't work?" They put physician guidelines in. As soon as you log on, there, there's your list of patients you can choose from, but they have required training programs built into this. It's going, hey, you got 3 more training programs we want you to go through. And one of them, typically once a month, it'll say, you weren't on the last phone call with all the other doctors. Go watch it, because it's videotaped and it's there for you. And, you click on it and you watch and you hear the doctors, and you can fast forward it if you're bored. But that's kind of a neat, by the way, and like the Paxlovid guidelines. As soon as he clicked on, I clicked on the Paxlovid 15 chart list, so I don't have to memorize it. But it's a video, it's recorded, and I said, look, I'm going to qualify you for this medicine. Check, 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 check. And he goes, thank you. And that's a really neat idea. They also have added something that I love just in the last couple of months. Now, before you can close out your note, there's a box you've got to check that says, when do you want a nurse to call this person back and see how they're doing? And you can check, don't do it. It was a prescription refill, don't do it. But for my eczema lady and my thymoma guy, I said, give them a call back, make sure they're better. And they built it into the system so that what it's doing is preventing patients from having to log back on and pay another fee to tell a doctor I didn't get better. It's really a neat concept in how you can use telemedicine to serve your patients. A nurse will check in on them and say, "Hey, Dr. Adams, sorry for that rash. Did you get away from that oven? And is it all better?" And yeah, good idea.
We'll have to bring that pizza oven person on if they're amenable to that. See a testimonial. We'll see if it works too visually. That's awesome. The kind of the built-in tools. It sounds like things are buttoned up, and you can even have a nurse follow up with them at a click of a button. That's really good. So
they're also letting the computer do a lot of the homework. When the patient logs on, the system says, "Please put your medicines down. Make that list. please pick the best diagnosis that fits what your current needs are. Put your allergies in here. Build your medical, like sort of first-time patient. So I don't have to go through all of those items. The computer's already done it for me. And I'll go, and there's a button that I push on. What's interesting is my phone rings and it says, "Doctor, you have a patient. Click yes if you want to take this patient." And it'll wait until I do, because I'm pulling up past medical use of this system. Because I don't want to see somebody that's logged on 3 times today, and this is the 4th doctor who didn't give her what he wants. I go, "No, thank you." Or I'll see somebody with a list of medicines that long, or a potential narcotic seeker that's been turned down before. I don't have to take the patient. I'll just go, "Nope, that's not for me." And the system makes it easier to do that. And it also it sends me reports like 3 of your patients came back and saw another doctor within 2 weeks of you seeing them. Okay. So I'll go back, click on that patient, see my note, see their note, and learn from it. It's kind of neat.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, on the flip side, I wanted to ask, anything you mentioned the conference calls and the kind of feedback sessions, anything that the company or the team has spent money on in the past year that everyone had high hopes would really help you get the job done, but it didn't?
No, I don't think so. There's been changes to policies and procedures and upgrades to the monitoring system because of patient complaints and concerns. And then they send every patient a "how'd your doctor do?" email, and they track those, and they rate you. They track things that they don't want you to do. Like, you should only be giving steroids to somebody every so often. Don't make that a major part of a treatment plan, for example. And you'll get a report card every month that says, "You gave 1 more steroid than I think you should have given," or something like that. Your patient ratings went down this month, but it's still 98%. I kind of like that feedback. And that has developed and grown in the last year, so that I've watched it develop and grow. But I don't see any failures. One of the big improvements in telemedicine that would help patients and doctors alike would be what has been proposed before Congress many, many times, is a national medical license. Because I can't see people outside the state of North Carolina, because that's my license area. Now, I can send a prescription outside of the state, which I do as a doctor for my own patients, because they're in Hawaii now. Yeah, I'm sending it to a local pharmacy. There's been multiple proposals before Congress to make a doctor's license a national license. Why do I have to get a different license in 50 different states to be able to do telemedicine in 50 different states? It's not, it's not necessary. So
that point, I wanted to tack on to that. Anything resources, technology that the company provides to you to, kind of manage the multi-state credentials, maybe even money to get 50 licenses in 50 states?
There's no financial assistance available to get, buy more licenses. And that the unfortunate part about licensing yourself in different states is you got to keep buying that license every year and spending that money. One of the things about this company, which I applaud, is we don't prescribe controlled substances, and the patients are told that right up front. If you're calling for Percocets, you dialed the wrong number. Go somewhere else. And that includes your ADHD medicines, which are easily used and abused. So, nope, sorry, controlled, but we'll do everything else outside of that realm. And it doesn't make it a lot easier. And even though a couple times a medicine that is not truly controlled got blocked by the computer, and I had to, call the nurse to say, "All right, what are we going to do here?" But it's a robust screening system with good checks and balances in it that I like.
I see. So you're not going to get 50 licenses anytime soon, it sounds like. Yeah.
No, they called me, asked me. I go fishing to Alaska every summer, and they said, "We need doctors in Alaska. You want to go get an Alaska license?" And I went, "No, that's expensive." So, and the population in Alaska is so small, the utilization in that state is fairly low. So it wouldn't be really cost effective to play that game.
I see.
Interesting. Yeah.
But if I had a national license, I'd love to see somebody in Alaska.
reciprocity across the states. There's some, some
by the way,
movement
I
in
think
that
it's going to
direction.
happen in the near future that they're going to do this because it prevents bad doctors from losing their license in one state and walking across the border and getting a license in another. They're not good checks and balances on that. And many times over the years, I've caught a bad doctor doing bad things to my patients. Like, whoops, no, who is this guy? Look him up. He lost his license already in 2 states.
Yeah, wild. Yeah, in terms of sort of resources, so it seems like you have figured out that there's good structure in terms of the telemedicine. There's good structure to be able to see patients flexibly. It's gotten you engaged in being able to spend the time that you want with the people that you want. A lot of that is really kind of empowering you. I've heard that one of the hiccups is that the pay is not as good. That's why, many physicians are not just kind of flocking to these telemedicine companies in waves, but beyond that, sort of the empowerment to have control over your schedule and such. What types of resources are they providing for you? Are there anything around sort of the educational side of it, CME, things like that?
I don't think any of the courses that they provide are designed to be CME, but I'm probably wrong on that. Because they do, I've never actually looked to see if the 43 courses that I've already completed, I can put in my box as a CME, because I've done more than enough CME because I have the time to do it that I need for licensure. And what I would tell you is, although it may or may not have CME credit available, which all I got to do is apply to do that, and I might make that suggestion at tomorrow's phone call, actually. Thank you. The courses that they give are great. I love them. And they'll say, well, we've had a lot of questions about migraine headaches, so we're going to put a migraine headache lecture out there and tell you why our recommendations are this, this, and this. And when we do the doctor videos where all the doctors are there and the staff is there, there's always a lead physician or two that are managing the calls so that they can talk doctor to doctor about issues, questions, concerns. And I really enjoy that. Because there'll be questions about something as simple as, why can't I write 1 year's worth of birth control? That's what I would do for an urgent care visit if they came in. And that was one of the questions that came up. Our policy has always been 90 days. Yeah, but that means this patient is going to call in every 90 days, pay a doctor visit to get a refill on a birth control. And last month they said, okay, never mind, you can write for 1 year of birth control pills. Thank you. So, they learn, and we make it better by having those doctor-to-doctor interactions. That's very educational.
You obviously have a decorated career. It sounds like you're about to head off to Turks and Caicos and fulfill that fantasy and see a couple patients from the beach. For you right now, what are your short and long-term goals at this point?
So that's interesting because, again, you're catching me at the end of my medical career where I'm doing this for fun and, not money. I like the money. I'll take it. My kids will spend it for me for sure. But I'm looking at this as a way to keep what has always been interesting to me as part of my life. I can do this for 3 more days or 3 more years. And the interesting part I'm discovering is the further you are away from, the day-to-day actions and decisions in medicine, the less capable you are. Because, my wife, as you know, will see these new drugs popping up on TV. She'd go, what's that? I go, I have no idea. I haven't heard of that drug before in my life. And I'm not going to stop now and go look it up. But there is a period in, if you did only telemedicine, I think there's a period of decreasing skill sets that you're going to have to address at some point in time. And so I'm not quite there yet, but I know that could be there. And in our company, they have the urgent care, a bunch of doctors all over the country. They have primary care. And that's kind of fun. I was actually recruited to be one of their primary care doctors. And I just said, no, that's going to take too many hours out of the day, because minimum 20 hours a week. I said, no, I'm semi-retired. Remember that. But But I've thought about it because I do so enjoy, like my thymoma patient and my rash patient, being able to talk to my patients and teach them about, the problems that they're having. And that reminded me to tell you my phone call before your phone call. My sister called me just to check in just before this phone call. And she had called me a month ago. I don't know. I'm getting old. I can't remember anything. And I went, please tell me you're not taking a statin. She goes, well, yeah, I am. You know that. I said, yeah, I thought I told you to stop that a long time ago. But she called me today. She goes, okay, I got to tell you this. I stopped my statin 3 days ago, and my memory is back. My fog has cleared. I'm fine. I went, see, I told you. And wait. There's more. I stopped my baby aspirin, and all my bruises are gone on my arm. I went, yeah, I told you this a month ago. I know, but I finally decided to try it. So I tell that story because patients become your family. Your family's always your family. And it's fun to be able to teach them what years of experience bring to the table.
That's phenomenal. And that's that continuous drive.
I could do more volunteering, teaching stuff. I have a young doctor that came to a practice that I had helped him build before he came right out of residency. And I gave him the statin story because he called me and says, why have you taken all my over 70 patients off their statins? And I gave him the answer, the medical answer. And he goes, but I don't understand. That's not what it says on my medical board questions. And that's not what I was told to memorize to get out of my med school and residency. I know. And I said, here's the deal. It will take you 3 years of seeing your own patients before you unlearn what somebody told you to memorize. And you'll start learning from your patients and you'll do it accordingly.
That's phenomenal, though, just being an advocate and be able to help your patients, your family in this ever-evolving landscape. What do you, at this point, what do you desire most in the world?
Well, it's funny because as I'm approaching the time when I could actually say, I'm not going to go to work anymore, But it's particularly true since the Job Corps centers have just closed and that job that I have is evaporating before my very eyes. I've had to ask myself that same question. And I find myself reading all these articles about, hey, doctors that retire early, how do you deal with all that free time? And the answer, I'm just looking to be happy. I made the choice to change Navy SEAL to doctor because I wanted happy. I made the choices that was proven to be good in my life because I wanted things that made me happy. And so now with the wisdom that comes with old age, I'm saying I'm going to focus a little more on my wife, my children, my grandchildren, and being happy. And, it's funny, I met with a lawyer this morning to redo and update my will. And the lawyer goes, well, you can't spend all your money before you die. What are you going to do with it? Because that's his job to put it on a piece of writing. My wife look at each other and go, let's go spend it. We're going on a cruise next month for 3 weeks in Europe and let's go. Our children don't need it. Or the future says, focus on
happiness. That's awesome. Last question. What keeps you up at night and what might you be worrying about the most at this present moment?
Well, because of my military background, I follow the war and, the wars all over the world very closely. And I follow the evil in the world. It keeps me awake at night, knowing I can't do anything about it. It's difficult, and I follow the stress and distress in our world. It's almost undeniable now that the COVID crisis worldwide was manufactured and not accidental. And that's an evil that is coming to light now because, quite honestly, we have, with the actions taken by our current president and Doge, not the Doge people, but the X people, they've given us back freedom of speech. So things that were always suppressed are all popping up now, and we're starting to learn a lot of truth about a lot of things. So what keeps me awake at night is the evil in this world and my inability to do anything of this.
That's awesome. So you mentioned a bit about your book. I wanted to end on the many books that you have. If you could give a quick spiel, elevator pitch about your books and what kind of people should be reading your books, where they can get it, so on and so forth. So I'll let you do your advertisement.
Okay, quick advertisement. As I mentioned earlier, 6 Days of Impossible is about Navy SEAL Hell Week and these 11 men out of 70 who survived Hell Week. But it's a story of success and failure. The final chapters of the book tells you, how we survived and things specifically that happened on a day-to-day basis to get through that challenge of 6 days without sleep, soaking wet, freezing cold. But the quotes that are in here are about success and failure, because it's really what we talked about earlier. Your life tests your life's challenges and what will bring you success in the future. So people that want to know about Seal Hellweek, go read the book. But if you want to, get some insights into success and failure, go read the book. The second book, and I wrote that book because a lot of SEAL books out there, and all of them mention Hell Week, but nobody ever describes what Hell Week is. And so I said, I got to tell that story. So it was all one of these, I'm going to tell it before I die. And it took me 3 years to write. When I was done, I went, wait, I got another story I need to tell. And that's the mentorship we were just talking about. This doctor book was really written, every chapter is another patient experience. But it includes medical school and residency and family dynamics of going to med school late. So it's a fun story too. But I wrote it thinking that I had so many fascinating experiences as an obstetrician. I did my own C-sections. I did, my own surgeries in the military. This makes the important point. There's a huge difference between being a civilian doctor and a military doctor. And the big difference is military doctors don't have lawyers telling them what they can and cannot do. We don't pay malpractice insurance, because if you want to sue me, you got to sue the United States government. So frivolous lawsuits don't happen in the military. If it's real, the government will settle with you. If it's not, you ain't going to sue the U.S. government. So those fun stories are in there. And I wrote it for every medical student or high school kid that thinks maybe they want to be a doctor, because there's stories in there that'll make you laugh, make you cry, and make you go. So that's what that's there for. And the third one, I don't have it in front of me, but it's a big, thick, 625-page book that is the transcribed letters of my great-great-grandfather, who was a corporal scribe in General Grant's headquarters during the Civil War, and all the letters that he wrote home. So the book is called My Dear Sarah, which is how he started all of his letters. Civil War letters, 1861 to 1865. And you get to see what war was back then through his letters home. And it's fascinating. And it wouldn't be a fun book to read, and it is a hard book to read, because I transcribed it with the same spelling and punctuation that he wrote his letters home. So it's an accurate portrayal of those letters. And he didn't spell real well at the beginning of the war. You go, what's that word? But by the end, you get a feel for what a soldier's life during the Civil War was, and what makes it a worthwhile book, if you're a Civil War fan, is while I was writing, he was transcribing all these letters, 325 of them, I stumbled across a book called The History of the 7th Connecticut Infantry Regiment during the Civil War, which is the unit my great-great-granddad was assigned to. So I'm able to pull out of that history and tell you what's going on in the war, read the letters, what's going on in the war, read the letters. And so it's a really neat piece of real history.
That's awesome.
The books being nonfiction.
And where can people find the books? How do they get a hold of them?
Amazon has them. Both of these books are available on audiobooks. Amazon, Audible. It's not in any bookstores. You have to order them online, because these are all self-published books.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Adams, for your time.